The problem with hurricane category rating. By the time Hurricane Helene reached western North Carolina a week ago, causing devastating floods, it was no longer a hurricane. This hints at the challenges in alerting the public about the risks that storms can bring inland, and also to the changing understanding of what makes these storms so dangerous. We're realizing more than ever how deadly inland flooding is, said Carl Schreck, hurricane researcher at North Carolina State University, who was in his home near Asheville, North Carolina when Helene struck. Before a hurricane hits, news headlines usually highlight the category of the storm and its wind speeds, he said, but after the storm hits, the headlines tend to be about the rain. That familiar 5-point category rating, known to experts as the Saffir-Simpson scale, is the main way that the public understands a hurricane's strength. But the category rating is based only on wind speeds, and it leaves out all of the other ways hurricanes can do damage, like storm surges, tornadoes, and rain-caused flooding. These other dangers can be more deadly than wind. Of 455 deaths directly caused by hurricanes from 2013 to 23, 12% were caused by wind and 11% by storm surges, where wind pushes seawater towards the shore. But 55% and 252 deaths were caused by flooding due to rain, according to the National Hurricane Center. As the climate warms, Americans can expect to see wetter, stronger, and slower moving storms that may be more likely to intrude farther inland. Inland populations are also generally poorer and less likely to have flood insurance compared to their coastal counterparts. Yet there is no simple, widely used numerical scale to communicate a hurricane's potential to cause flooding, as there is to communicate its wind speed. Some scientists have developed new metrics to try to capture a hurricane's rain risk, but Mr. Schreck, who recently developed one such measure, said the National Hurricane Center understandably does not want to confuse the public with multiple rating scales. Experts still hope to grow public awareness beyond the category rating. We need to rethink how we name, categorize, and talk about these things because too many people are being lost, being victims to this, said Kathy Dello, state climatologist of North Carolina. When it comes to big storms, I never think about the categories, she said. Hurricane Florence, one of the wettest and most destructive hurricanes to hit North Carolina, made landfall as Category 1. And Fred, a storm that caused record-breaking flooding in West North Carolina in 2021, was a tropical storm, not a hurricane. Even downgrading to a tropical storm, Helene was still deadly. Its unusually large size meant that it took longer for the storm to pass overhead, and so it rained longer. As the mountain slopes drove the storm's moisture upward, it condensed into even more rain that funneled down the valleys, leading to record-breaking flooding. Officials warned ahead of time that the risk of extreme rainfall and flash flooding, they warned about this. The National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, put out a rare news release warning of catastrophic, life-threatening inland flooding, and the National Hurricane Center supplements its category scale with a lot more information about different hurricane hazards, including rainfall. But in spite of all these warnings, the human toll remained catastrophic. A storm by any other name, around 10 days before Helene struck, a different tropical storm caused extensive flooding in southeast North Carolina, and that storm fell short of the wind speeds required of a hurricane. It did not receive any official name or category rating and was termed Potential Tropical Cyclone 8. Not having a name was a problem, said Ms. Dello, because it made it harder to communicate its risks to the public. But the unnamed storm had several effects. Some locations saw around 20 inches of rain. There was flash flooding on Carolina Beach. Parts of Brunswick County saw extreme flooding, and that lasted for days. Some roads were washed out. One river had its second highest level on record, exceeded only by Hurricane Florence flood levels. Whether experts have gotten much better over the years at forecasting major storms, hurricanes or not, but they cannot easily overcome how entrenched the hurricane category system is when it comes to the public's sense of risk. The National Weather Service does provide an extensive, excessive rainfall outlook, which predicts the risk of extreme rainfall in a given location with 4 ratings: marginal, slight, moderate, and high risk. The high risk ratings are issued on only about 16 days annual across the U.S., said Alex Lammers, who leads forecasting at NWS Weather Prediction Center. But those days account for 36% of the deaths and 80% of damages caused by flooding in the U.S., he said. It's about the strongest bell that we can ring, he said. For Helene, the Weather Service issued a high risk rating around Asheville about 2 days before the worst flooding started. It was a really remarkable forecast, Ms. Dello said, of the warning's accuracy, but she said the forecast alone is not sufficient. To be more accountable, it needs to be translated into how much damage might happen on the ground, the threat to lives and infrastructure. And there's a false sense of security. Reports have referred to Helene as a 1-in-1,000-year storm. This term is essentially a statistical estimate by NOAA based on past rainfall in a location. It's used by city planners, engineers, floodplain managers to design for future floods, but these estimates may provide a false sense of security. They're based on the past, and as the climate changes, the past becomes a poorer prediction of the future. As a 2021 study in Europe found, climate change can increase the intensity of the most extreme flooding while also decreasing the intensity of moderate flooding. This means that recent historical experience may downplay the risk of what is to come. In Asheville, the storm that occurred on average once in 1,000 years is predicted to bring 11.4 inches of rain in 3 days, but during Helene, the airport's weather station recorded nearly 14 inches of rain in that duration, according to the North Carolina State Climate Office. The data that NOAA bases these predictions on is also out of date, Ms. Jello said. NOAA uses weather observations up to the year 2000 in most places, which leaves out over 2 decades of storms, and it does not account for climate change, which is expected to make extreme rainfall more common. Updated rainfall estimates will be available starting 2026, NOAA said, accounting for rainfall changes in a warming climate. But even then, it will take a lot of work to make these risks easy for people to understand. And this is from the New York Times on DNYUZ. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.